On behalf of the Highland Park Public Library, we'd like to welcome you to Library in Your Living Room. We are pleased to present Shelf Isolation, a weekly mini-series about books, culture, and what to read next. I'm Sarah, and this is your Information and Reader Services Department. In this episode, we are excited to share with you what we've been reading, watching, and or listening to during self-isolation. To begin our mini-series, I'm going to turn things over to Readers Roundtable expert and moderator, Michelle.
Thanks, Sarah. So the first thing that I've been reading this week is a book called The Well-Read Black Girl, Finding Our Stories, Discovering Ourselves. It's by Gloria Edim, and she is the founder of the Well-Read Black Girl Book Club. This is a collection of essays by Black women writers about the books that have shaped their lives. I just think it's a really great book. It talks a lot about just books that maybe you don't know by Black women writers, and it does include lots of different lists and different genres of books that the Well-Read Black Girl Book Club thinks are really important for you to read. So now I definitely will have more books to read because I do feel like it is important to read broadly, especially books by Black women. So again, I really recommend The Well-Read Black Girl. Secondly, to get into the spooky mood, because I don't read horror or anything, I read Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. It is a Hercule Poirot mystery. It actually takes place, I believe, in the 1960s. It is Poirot investigating the murder of a teenage girl who said that she witnessed a murder. So not only is Hercule trying to find out who killed this girl, he is also maybe trying to find a second murder victim. I actually thought this was not the best Agatha Christie I've read. It might be that it didn't play. I like the ones that take place in the 30s and the 40s, but this one, it does include the murder of a child. So if that is something that you are not comfortable with, I would probably pass on this one and read one of her other works. I didn't figure out who the murderer is. I never do. I did enjoy the story, and it did have that Halloween feel without being scared. And that's all I have to talk about this week, so I'll pass it on to Stephanie.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, I read a variety of things this week. The first one I'm going to talk about it's called When Churchill Slaughtered Sheep and Stalin Robbed Banks. And it's by Giles, Milton, and he actually has the Unknown History podcast. And it was a really fun read. There are lots of funny chapters. I'll read a few to you, and then I'll tell you a little bit about one of them. So it was like a question of mistaken identity, kings, queens, and madmen, papal bull, up and away. But the one I'm going to focus on is When Churchill Slaughtered Sheep. It's pretty interesting because he actually, in July 1943, he had been talking about using some type of chemical warfare to use it on the Germans. And so in July 1943, on the shores of Bernard Bay on the west coast of Scotland, the town saw a bunch of activity taking place. And they thought that it was a bunch of military exercise going on, but actually they were scientists. And they were herding sheep onto a boat, and then they took them over to this island. And at the island, they put them in like little crates, and they put a jacket kind of over them and stuff because they decided they were going to see how anthrax what it would do to the sheep. They ended up, basically, they took a mortar and they shut off this anthrax onto this island. And day 1 and day 2, the sheep were just fine. They were eating grass, just hanging out, doing what sheep do. And on the 3rd day, they were all dead. They found out that, hey, this was truly effective, but they had one little mishap. One of the dead sheep fell into the bay and floated over to the town. And it ended up infecting a bunch of other livestock in the town. So the British government paid off a lot of farmers with a lot of money and stuff. And what they found out with this was that they had burned their clothes, that these anthrax spores were on this island, and there was no way to get rid of them. The next book I read is an advanced reader's copy, which is due out in March. If you like true crime, gruesome crime, this book is for you. It's called The Last Call. And it's by Elon Green. And it's about New York in the 90s, well, the 80s and 90s. And then parts of his body turn up in these garbage bags. They're found at a rest area. And somehow his ID is still in there. It's really weird because the person was very meticulous. They know that they had to have some medical background because of the way that they dismembered the person. So it ends up that it's at a time when homosexuality is frowned upon and people are still very much in the closet. And this first man was married, had a family in Philadelphia, had gone to New York for business, had gone to one of the well-known gay nightclubs called the Townhouse. And at the Townhouse, this guy obviously met somebody who wasn't very nice. They're like trying to piece together what was going on. Maybe piece together is not a good word. But anyway, they're trying to put together what, happened, how this guy ended up here. So they go back. He's from Philadelphia. They meet his wife. They have 2 children. She kind of was suspecting maybe something in his background was there were some flags going on and stuff, but she kept pursuing this case. And at the time, it was more the police were interested in, busting what's going on in these gay nightclubs versus like helping the crime that was being committed against homosexuals. And so it's a really fascinating read because it tells you the history of a lot of the gay bars and nightclubs in New York, about the victimization of the gay, lesbian, and then basically about how they kind of get the police to come back around and the police kind of start helping these people. But it took a lot more pressure from the community to started like saying, hey, we need to solve these crimes, because it was this one guy. Then like 6 months later, another body was found someplace else, same condition, bags tied the same way and everything. And it ended up being 4 people that they were able to eventually link to this person, which I'm not going to tell you who it was, because the person in college had done something similar to this and was acquitted. So it was a really, really good book. I highly recommend it. Again, it's not coming out until March, but just the way that the person reported on this, you get a really great understanding of the history. And you also realize why they're so distrustful of law enforcement, because of the way that they've been treated. And then we'll go on to something nicer. I think Katie probably has this book too, The Buttermilk Kitchen. So I made the biscuits in this book, and I must say that they were heavenly. The tricky thing is, it takes a little bit of time. She said that you get 10 biscuits. I think I ended up with about 20, because I guess I should have figured out, hey, 5 cups of flour, that's going to be a lot of biscuits. But the really interesting thing was you froze and you grate the butter, 5 sticks of butter too. Something about 5s with this. I made them and they were heavenly. I highly recommend this cookbook. The next thing I'm going to do is the fried chicken, which it's a fried chicken sandwich that you do with the biscuit. And you brine the chicken in sweet tea. Then you use day old pancake batter to fry it. So anyway, I'll let you know next time how that goes. But this is what the biscuits look like. And they were really, really good. And on that note, as I take a bite of my biscuit, I'm going to pass it on to Gus.
All right, Stephanie, you can't keep doing this to us. I'm still waiting. Still waiting for anyway, aside from that, those did sound pretty good. So this week I wanted to read something light, but I didn't. I read a graphic novel that I've been meaning to read, and I'm embarrassed that I haven't read it so far. Will, I want to apologize to you first here, but I have not read it, and it's been recommended to me. It is Batman: The Long Halloween. I have not read it. It came out in 1996. I'm sure there's a couple of you out there that has not read it. I'm obviously one of them. It is about, it's a Batman story. It takes place in his early years, and it's about a story about a mysterious killer named Holiday who murders people on holidays, one each month. The Joker's in it, all the standard Batman characters are in it. I always wanted to read it, and I'm coming clean. I'm confessing I have not read it, and I know they were doing it for the comic book club, and I just didn't want to live this lie anymore. I just started it, and it's really good. I love the artwork. It's by Tim Sale. He's a really, really good artist. So that's what I've been reading. Also, I like to dabble in certain things, hobbies, if you will, right? Like comic books, games, and all that stuff. But what you don't know is that I've always wanted to make my own soap. That's why I got Pure Soap Making. Did I make my own soap? No. But it's been one of my lifelong things to do here. So I've been reading a book called Pure Soap Making by Anne Marie Fayola, but it's a really good book, and I like it a lot because it has a lot of pictures. I like, picture books. Some might say I'm, a little kid, but anyway, it's really easy to read, and they have a lot of good recipes in this book, so I highly recommend it for anybody that wants to get into the world of soap making. One of these days I'm going to make it, and I will report back. Also, I've been playing a game I haven't played since the days of the Wii and the Nintendo Wii. One of my favorite systems. But they remade this game, and it came out for the Switch not too long ago, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. It's a very, very good game. Highly recommend it to everybody who likes like JRPGs. It's just an awesome game. It was really good on the Wii. It's a million times better on the Switch. So can't recommend it highly enough. And on that note, I will go ahead and give it to Katie.
Thanks, Gus. It's been a while since I've been on Shelf Isolation. You would think I would have a lot of doorstopper books to talk about, and that is wrong. I have 2 little novellas to talk about and 1 bigger book. My 2 novellas, I read Binti for the first time. Again, this feels like a confession because Nnedi Okorafor is amazing, and she's from Chicagoland, but she wrote Binti, I want to say 8 years ago, and it's a tiny little book, probably about 120 pages. You can get through it in a day or 2. It is fantastic. It has Nnedi Okorafor's kind of mixture of the mechanical and the biological, which is always awesome. Like, she's on a ship going to an interstellar university, but the ship is like a genetically engineered shrimp, and you live in like some of its lungs, and that's where you get your air to breathe, and it's fantastic. It also has some of her trademark violence, which is not super fun. They don't go into a lot of detail, but again, if you don't like violence, probably stay away from Ms. Okorafor's books, but I really liked it. There was a really good resolution. I really love the way that she kind of weaves in backstory with just a few words. She's fantastic at it. I also read Upright Women Wanted. This is by Sarah Gailey, who is a non-binary author, and the story revolves around women and people who are non-binary who might be identified as women from other people. It is a fantastic book. This is also about 100 pages, which I was surprised by. I thought it was much longer. It's kind of a weird Western. It feels a little bit like a Western, but it's actually post-apocalyptic. We don't really know what the apocalypse was. We don't really know what the state of America is. It does take place in a post-America America, but they don't really call it America. It has its own laws, and it follows a group of librarians, and the librarians are stereotyped like us librarians are stereotyped now, just nice, affable people who go around kind of like the Pony Express and distribute books to people, except these librarians are also distributing things that are not things that the state would want people to distribute. Also like knives and guns and things, and helping the rebellion. What rebellion? Against what? We don't really know. One thing I loved when I picked up this book, on the back it says, "Fight the state, be a librarian," which I had to pick it up. It was like legally required for me to do that, but it's just a little tiny little book, and I want Sarah Gailey to write more. They're a fantastic writer. Again, it's like lots of world building in just a couple little sentences, like you know all of the technological state, and you know like what's allowed and what's not, just from a couple pages. It's fantastic. I also went and the one novel length book that I have to talk about is Six of Crows. Again, I'm behind the curve on this. It's Leigh Bardugo, who is a fantastic writer. I loved her Grishaverse and things, and this is still in the Grishaverse. You don't have to have read any of her books before this to enjoy it. Everything has a little glossary in the front, which I appreciated because it's been years since I read the Grishaverse. So this book, okay, it's like 400 pages. I expected it to kind of amble along. No, page 100, you're in the middle of a heist, and it never lets go. But it's like, it's tense, but it doesn't like makes you super anxious. It's just kind of like, oh, they did this thing. Where do they wander off to? Oh, we're not going to find out because we're going to go to another character's point of view for like 3 chapters. So it's really well done and drawn out, but not in a way that makes you extremely anxious, but just the kind of fun, like I need to keep on reading to find out what happens. She's fantastic. If you like heists, if you like just kind of coming of age stories, if you like sort of sci-fi fantasy, but you're not really into it, but you like mysteries, or you like caper movies, this is the book for you. So that's all I have for this week. And I am going to bring it over to Karen.
Oh, thank you, Katie. I guess I'll be the first one to talk about anything political today. I just wanted to say I left work at 5:30, went straight to a polling place and early voted. I hope you can see my sticker. So that's done. I don't think I've ever voted early before. It was really easy, no wait, as it turned out. So that's one thing. Last week, I had prepared to talk about a book that I decided not to talk about. It's called Persons Unknown by Susie Steiner. It's a mystery. Turned out to be book 2 in a series about a female detective. I had read the first book years back because somebody recommended it. Then I liked it, forgot about it, and then all of a sudden saw on the shelf a book by Susie Steiner that I'd never heard of. It was book 3. So I went to Libby and I was able to find book 2 and read it. And I struggled with what I wanted to say about this because there are so many good surprises in the plot that I hesitate to even start talking about it because it'll give something away, and I really want more people to read these. But anyhow, just to put it briefly, the detective is maybe 40-ish and single, and she has a very complicated personal life. And then, of course, her job as a detective in England is also complicated. And in this second book, these two strands come together and, unexpectedly, and it's really good. And there's a third book that I am going to read next, I hope. Also this week, I think I mentioned last week that I was going to start The Darkest Evening by Anne Cleeves. And this is part of the Vera Stanhope series. And Vera is sort of a female Columbo, if you remember him, the very rumpled looking raincoat and seemingly a little bit absent-minded, but she is just very respected by her staff and just very understated as a detective. I really like this character. There are DVDs of the Vera Stanhope series. It was made for TV, but the person who plays Vera, very well-groomed and attractive, and I just couldn't watch these. It was just not Vera to me. So I never did see more than a half of one of those, but the books are very good, and I recommend the whole series. And in fact, I'd recommend anything by Anne Cleeves. And Susie Steiner and Anne Cleeves write books that move very well, hard to put down. You decide to dip into one, and soon you're half-inch through it, and you don't even feel it. So that's it for me this week. And so we'll move on to Jackie.
Thank you, Karen. So this week, I read a book called What Unites Us? Reflections on Patriotism by Dan Rather. And this is a series of essays that he's written that talks about, what it means to be an American and what it means to be a patriot today in our us versus them world that we seem to live in. So he has 15 essays in this book. They're divided into 5 subjects: freedom, community, exploration, responsibility, and character. So he has taken these ideas and pulled out memories from his Texas childhood and his extensive career and wrote essays describing different aspects. For instance, in the freedom section, he wrote an essay about voting. And he brings up his first time he went to a precinct meeting back in 1946. His dad decided he needed to come to the precinct meeting, and this is how the candidates were used to be selected. Rather than going through primaries, they would have precinct meetings and then go to the state precinct and then go to the national precinct. So his dad brought him to the precinct meeting, which was primarily white men who were in charge of it. And into their precinct walked 5 African-American men who mentioned that they had all fought in World War II. So Dan's dad said to him, when they stand up, which is how you voted, when they stand up, we stand up. So they happened to be the only white people who stood up at the same time the African Americans did. And Dan's dad never really explained to him why he did that, but he got the sense from his dad that he respected their service to the country, so he wanted them to have a say in what their precinct was doing. So it's a very interesting series of essays and uplifting in a lot of ways because it brings back why we are who we are in America and the ideals that were founded on the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, and how some of these things have been skewered over the years. So it's a very interesting series of essays. We've got the book and we've got the audiobook. Libby and Hoopa both have the ebook and the audiobook. And if you enjoy listening to Dan Rather, he actually narrates the audiobook. So it's a very good one. And then the other thing I've been working on is just my retirement. So this is my last self-isolation episode and then my last week at the library. So I'm leaving shortly. And I just wanted to say, I have a whole thing, that I've been very lucky to work with a number of fantastic people. Those of you see here in this self-isolation episode and many, many others. To my fellow Information and Reader Services members and the formerly Reference and Readers Advisory Librarian, you are wonderful librarians. I've learned so much from each of you and all those that have worked with me in the past 30 plus years. And it's not only the Information and Reader Services staff, but the film and music, membership services, computers and technology, youth services, administrative, the technical services, and the maintenance staff. You are all awesome and inspiring. And I know that you will continue serving the Highland Park community well. And there have been many, many changes over the years that I've worked with the library, renovation, staffing changes, and departmental changes. But through it all, the staff shined. And probably one of the biggest challenges we have ever faced is this year with COVID. How can we maintain services to our community when the library is closed? Well, we designed innovative remote programming like this, shelf isolation. So we literally closed the building on Monday, March 16th. We had an information reader services Zoom meeting later that week. Someone said, hey, why don't we do a readers roundtable-like program? I don't remember who. Someone said, hey, let's make up a name. Sarah Marie, I know, designed the graphic. The following week, we taped it, and it was up on our YouTube channel on Friday, March 27th. So this program, Cooking with Books, Readers Roundtable, and so many others were a way that we knew we can connect to our Highland Park community. And we were one of the ways we knew we could connect. And we are not the only department to devise remote programs. The Youth Services Department created remote story times and craft programs. Media Services did remote book librarians program. Beth, our marketing specialist, booked authors of interest to the community. And the Membership Services Department had a very cute program for Mother's Day. We also highlighted our Perfect Pick service to bring you Reader's Advisory Service with our digital materials. And I think we did over 140 Perfect Picks. I don't have the exact number. And for the digital downloadable ebooks, the audiobook, movies, and music, we increased the limits of those so that you, the community, can access this material. We also instituted a chat service to answer your questions. And over the past 30 years, you residents of Highland Park, you challenged me with difficult but intriguing reference questions and reader's advisory questions. And I basically learned something new every day. Not that I remembered it, but I basically did learn something new every day. So I've been very lucky to have my dream job, and even luckier to work with these amazing people, my work family. So I will miss you all, and thank you very much for all your help. And for the last time, I will turn this over to Sarah.
Thanks, Jackie. That's hard to follow up, and we're really going to miss you. And if you ever want to guest star on Shelf Isolation, just let us know. I'll start with my reviews for the week. So my first book is a pick from my 2-year-old. And this book actually last week was the #2 best-selling book on Amazon, second only to the new John Grisham. And this is Room on the Broom. This is a great Halloween book. It's by Julia Donaldson, illustrated by Axel Scheffler. It's adorable. I love all of their books. They work together on many books, including The Gruffalo, Stickman, but this one's good for Halloween. A witch on her broom keeps basically collecting animals as she goes along. And if you like this, there is an animated movie that is available on Netflix and Amazon Prime. I'm sure we also have it on DVD at the library, but this episode will go up the day before Halloween. So if you need it immediately, it is streaming in several places. So very cute book, and my toddler has been enjoying it. I should also mention that while it is about a witch and is a great book for Halloween, it does not ever mention Halloween. So it's not like a seasonal book that you can only get out once a year. You can read it anytime. You just need a cute little book about a witch, and it rhymes. My second pick this week, this book I actually bought, but I know at least one library in the consortium has it. This is Busy Toddler's Guide to Actual Parenting. If there's anybody out there with a toddler, if you don't know about Busy Toddler, she has an Instagram account that has lots of great ideas for craft activities, sensory bins, a lot of parenting advice, and this is her first book. It has all color illustrations, but lots of great, really simple activities to do with toddlers, and I'm looking forward to trying more of these soon. And finally, no surprise, I have one romance novel this week. This is Christina Lauren's Twice in a Blue Moon, and I don't want to give away very much, but I'll just say that it's a cute love story between an actress who is also the daughter of a movie star, and the beginning of the book is how she meets this young man. She's 18, he's 20-ish, and then something happens and they don't see each other for years, and then they are reunited on the set of a movie. So that's all I'll give away of the plot, but it's a great standalone romance. Christina Lauren's books tend to be pretty funny. I found this one to be less funny and a little more serious, but very romantic and very enjoyable. Anyway, that's it for me, and I will pass it on to Nancy.
Thank you, Sarah. This week, in honor of Halloween, I am presenting a favorite book, history book of mine, The Devil in the Shape of a Woman by Carol Carlson. It's a very important and really intriguing book. So what Professor Carlson did was she examines all 344 cases of women accused of witchcraft in New England at the in 17th and early 18th century, and statistically compared them. Who were these women that were accused and what were their characteristics? And we do have it in the library. And I also, when I was checking to see if we had the library, I noticed that now on our app on Android, you can not only look up to make sure you have a book and put it on hold, you can check to see if it's on digital. And you'll see here that Hoopla is there too. And it tells me that it's available on Hoopla by audio. So Professor Carlson found with this book, and it's well written, I think it started as a dissertation, that the women that were accused of witchcraft did have a pattern. The pattern included their age, whether they were property owners, whether they were outspoken, child mortality, and also how much land they owned, and whether or not they had brothers or husbands that were more active leaders in the household. So basically, there was a clear pattern of women not conforming to the norms of Puritan society, of having lots of children and being a helpmate. And so there was a clear pattern of moving outside of being a young mother with a husband who was followed the Puritan standards. So it's really well researched book. It's been out a long time. It came out in the 80s, I believe, and that's when I got my copy. But I think it's a good reference, and it's in our library, and it really makes you think about witches and why women were accused of witches in both colonial England and Europe as well. And so I'm going to move on to the archives. We all also know the story of Alexander Graham Bell, come here, Watson, the telephone. Well, it didn't really quite happen like that, because in Highland Park, before that ever happened, there's a demonstration of a telephone. Like all inventions, the telephone was a series of different inventors making progress and things that are working and not working. But there was a man named Elisha Gray who lived for many years in Highland Park. He was on the school board, he was an alderman, he was an inventor, he invented this cool fax signing machine. But he also filed a patent for the telephone the same day as Alexander Graham Bell. Graham Bell got the patent, and there was a lawsuit, went all the way to Supreme Court, and Bell won. So, and Gray was pretty bitter about that, but he still was an innovative man. He electrified the North Shore and very accomplished. And we have many things related to him in the archives. And the reason I brought it up this week is because the History Channel called us and wanted to use some of our images. So that's kind of cool too. But the truth is that the telephone was invented before that by an Italian gentleman who did the first demonstration in Cuba. But that's kind of how inventions work. With that, I will send it off to William. Thank you.
And thank you, Nancy. So my dad turns 82 today, and with him in my mind and in my heart, I am going to be watching Cooley High, which was one of my favorite films growing up. Loosely based on the early life of screenwriter Eric Monti, Cooley High takes place in 1964 and tells the story of a group of high school seniors at Edwin G. Cooley Vocational High School in the last weeks before their graduation, and their adventures in life and love as only 18-year-olds can get into. Think American Graffiti with a more diverse cast. Now, despite being a film that was released in 1975, Cooley High had a major impact on my media consumption before I'd even heard of it. Starters, Monty would go on to work on multiple television series, including the well-regarded Good Times, along with deep cuts like What's Happening and its sequel, What's Happening Now, both inspired by the same times in his early life. The soundtrack of the film would be the way I came to really enjoy Motown, with artists like Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, and Smokey Robinson filling the total soundtrack. And I wasn't alone. The R&B group Boyz II Men, who were mainstays at every graduation/dance I had for most of my teens, had named their first album Cooley High Harmony after the film. They also covered a song from the soundtrack, It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday, and did a music video heavily influenced by the film. Also, not the only artist to have a music video influenced by the film. 90s rap group The Fugees also did a video heavily inspired by the movie theater scene in Cooley High for their cover of Killing Me Softly with his song, which in itself was inspired by Don McLean's performance, which I was also all about due to my obsession with American Pie, but that's neither here nor there. Finally, and the main reason I bring this all up is because my dad went to Cooley Vocational High School, albeit a year or two before Eric Monty would have been there. He took machine shop classes there because they were filled up at Dunbar, which was closer to his house growing up. Now, I don't know what it was like for him there, other than however you could imagine it being like for a 17-year-old black kid in an nearly all-white class. But it worked out well enough that eventually I'm here, and he is now competent enough with doing handiwork that my mother feels he is more than capable of redoing the kitchen starting next week after he retires. Again, you can find Cooley High on Hoopla and through the consortium on DVD and Blu-ray. If you want to go all the way down the rabbit hole, there'll be a bunch of links below. And with that, I will send it back to Sarah.
That's it for today, folks. As always, please remember that we are all here for you. We are available for comments, questions, or concerns that you may have, and you can reach us online through Facebook at facebook.com/HPLibrary, through our Twitter, which is @HPLibrary, or via email at hppla@hplibrary.org. Because the library's hours and services can change suddenly due to COVID, it's best to contact us via email or via chat on our website before coming to the library. Our music today was Carefree by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find more information about this and the titles we mentioned in our show notes below. Okay, everybody, this is us signing off. Until next time, stay safe.